The rain came down in a steady drizzle, turning the streets of downtown Chicago into a canvas of reflected neon and streetlights. It was the kind of November evening that made people walk faster, hunching their shoulders against the cold dampness that seeped through even the thickest coats. The temperature hovered just above freezing, and a bitter wind swept off Lake Michigan, carrying with it the promise of an early winter. Emily Carter pushed through the employee entrance of Rossi's Italian restaurant at exactly 5:47 p.m., 3 minutes before her shift officially started. She always arrived early, a habit born from years of needing this job more than it needed her. The warmth of the kitchen hit her immediately, along with the familiar symphony of sizzling pans, shouted orders, and the rhythmic chopping of vegetables. "You're gonna catch pneumonia one of these days walking here in this weather," called out Marco, the head chef, without looking up from the risotto he was stirring with practiced precision. Emily hung her damp jacket on the hook and pulled her dark hair into a tight ponytail. "The bus is more expensive than my umbrella budget," she replied with a slight smile, though there was truth behind the joke. At 24, Emily had become an expert at calculating every dollar, every decision weighted against her mounting student loans and the dream of culinary school that seemed to drift further away with each passing month. She tied her black apron around her waist and checked her appearance in the small mirror by the staff lockers. Brown eyes stared back at her, tired, but determined. She'd been working at Rossi's for 2 years now, ever since dropping out of community college when her mother got sick. The medical bills had piled up faster than she could count, and even though her mom had recovered, the debt remained like a shadow that followed Emily everywhere. "Table assignments are on the board," said Jennifer, the front-of-house manager, breezing past with a clipboard. "You've got Section 3 tonight, plus you're covering VIP if they need backup." Emily nodded, grabbing her order pad and pen. Section 3 was decent. Good turnover, usually decent tips. The VIP section was a different animal entirely. Rossi's had a reputation in certain circles of Chicago, the kind of reputation that wasn't advertised but everyone knew about. Politicians, lawyers, businessmen with expensive watches and careful eyes. They all came to Rossi's when they wanted privacy and excellent food. The restaurant itself was beautiful, in an old-world way. Dark wood paneling, leather booths, crisp white tablecloths, and soft jazz playing just loud enough to create ambiance without overwhelming conversation. Vintage photographs of Italy lined the walls, and the lighting was kept deliberately dim, creating pockets of intimacy throughout the dining room. Emily began her evening routine, checking her tables, ensuring water glasses were spotless, folding napkins into perfect fans. The familiar motions were almost meditative, allowing her mind to drift while her hands worked automatically. "How's the studying going?" asked Pete, one of the bartenders, as Emily passed by to grab silverware. "What studying?" Emily replied with a wry smile. "Between here and my morning shift at the coffee shop, I'm lucky if I remember what day it is." Pete shook his head sympathetically. "You're gonna burn out, kid." "Probably," Emily agreed, "but I'll burn out with my rent paid." The first customers began trickling in around 6:30 p.m. A young couple celebrating an anniversary, a group of businesswomen who ordered 3 bottles of wine and laughed loudly at private jokes, an elderly man who came every Tuesday and ordered the same thing, veal piccata and a glass of Chianti. Emily fell into the rhythm of service, smiling, recommending dishes, navigating the delicate dance between attentive and intrusive. She was good at her job, not because she loved it, but because she'd learned that survival often depended on being good at things you didn't particularly love. At 8:15 p.m., Jennifer appeared at Emily's side, her expression carefully neutral in that way that meant something important was happening. "Emily, I need you in VIP," she said quietly. "Stephanie called in sick, and we've got a party of 6 coming in. High-priority guests." Emily felt her stomach tighten slightly. VIP meant bigger tips, but it also meant higher stakes. One mistake in VIP could cost you your job. "Of course. Give me 2 minutes to hand off my current tables." She quickly briefed another server on her section, smoothed her apron, and made her way to the VIP area, a semi-private section at the back of the restaurant separated from the main dining room by frosted glass panels and heavy velvet curtains. The space had its own entrance from a side street, allowing certain guests to come and go without walking through the main restaurant. The VIP section was already being prepared. Fresh flowers on the table, the best china, crystal glasses that caught the light like diamonds. Emily checked everything twice, her attention to detail sharpening. Whoever these guests were, management was clearly treating them as very important indeed. "They'll be here in 10 minutes, Jennifer said, appearing beside her again. Standard service, but keep conversation minimal unless they initiate. Refill drinks without being asked. You know the drill. Emily nodded. She'd worked VIP before, though not often. It was always the same type of clientele, people who valued discretion as much as the food. At exactly 8:25 p.m., she heard voices in the private entrance. Male voices, deep and controlled, speaking in tones that suggested authority and careful measurement. Emily positioned herself near the curtain, professional smile in place, hands folded in front of her. The curtain parted, and 6 men entered the VIP section. The first thing Emily noticed was how they moved, not like regular restaurant guests, but with a coordinated awareness of their surroundings. Their eyes swept the room, checking exits, noting positions. They were all well-dressed, expensive suits that probably cost more than Emily made in 3 months. But there was something about them that suggested the suits were armor rather than fashion. The second thing she noticed was the man in the center. Jonathan Marino was 39 years old, though he carried himself with the kind of confidence that made age irrelevant. He was tall, maybe 6'1", with dark hair styled immaculately, and a jawline that could have been carved from granite. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, and his shoes were polished to a mirror shine. But it was his eyes that caught Emily's attention. Dark, intelligent, and constantly calculating, as if he was solving complex equations with every glance. He had the kind of presence that changed the atmosphere of a room simply by entering it. The other men clearly deferred to him, positioning themselves almost unconsciously to give him the seat with the best view of both the entrance and the main dining room. "Good evening, gentlemen," Emily said, her voice steady despite the sudden awareness that this was no ordinary VIP party. "Welcome to Rossi's. My name is Emily, and I'll be taking care of you this evening." Jonathan Marino's eyes met hers for just a moment, a brief assessment that felt like being scanned by some very sophisticated machine. Then he nodded slightly and took his seat, the other men following suit. "Water for the table," said one of the men, a heavy-set individual with graying hair and a scar that ran from his right ear to his collar. His voice was gravel and cigarettes. "And the wine list." "Of course," Emily replied, already moving to fulfill the request. Her hands were steady as she poured water, her mind cataloging details without quite knowing why. The way they sat, the way their eyes never stopped moving, the expensive watch on Marino's wrist that probably cost more than her car, if she had a car. She returned with the wine list, presenting it to the gray-haired man who seemed to be acting as intermediary. Up close, she could see he had the kind of weathered face that suggested a long life of hard decisions. "Give us a few minutes with this," he said, not unkindly. "Then we'll order food." Emily nodded and retreated to a respectful distance, positioning herself where she could observe without hovering. From her vantage point, she watched the men converse in low tones, their body language suggesting this was partly business, partly camaraderie. Jonathan Marino listened more than he spoke, but when he did say something, everyone else immediately fell silent to hear him. There was something almost theatrical about it, Emily thought. The careful choreography, the subtle hierarchy, the way information flowed toward Marino and decisions flowed out from him. She'd seen powerful men before, CEOs, politicians, but this was different. This was power without the need to advertise it. 20 minutes passed. Emily took their wine order, a bottle of Barolo that cost $400, and then their food orders. They ordered family style, antipasti, pasta, secondi, the works, the kind of meal that suggested they'd be here for hours. As Emily relayed the orders to the kitchen, Marco raised an eyebrow. "VIP going all out tonight?" "Looks like it," Emily replied, not mentioning the strange undercurrent of tension she'd felt in the room. "Just keep 'em happy," Marco said, turning back to his station. "People like that tip well when they're treated right." Emily returned to VIP, delivering bread and olive oil, refreshing water glasses, bringing the antipasti platter arranged like a work of art. The men ate and talked, their conversation occasionally punctuated by low laughter. Jonathan Marino remained mostly quiet, nursing his wine and watching his companions with those calculating eyes. Emily performed her duties with practiced efficiency, present but not intrusive, attentive but not overbearing. She was good at being invisible when necessary, a skill learned from years of navigating spaces where she didn't quite belong. The evening progressed normally for nearly an hour. Emily brought course after course, each plate perfect, each timing impeccable. The men seemed pleased. The wine flowed and the atmosphere in the VIP section began to relax slightly. Whatever business they'd been discussing seemed to be resolving itself favorably. It was 9:47 p.m. when everything changed. Emily was returning from the kitchen with a tray holding 6 espressos and a selection of desserts when she heard the main entrance of the restaurant open with more force than usual. The sound cut through the ambient noise. Not quite a slam, but enough to make several diners look up from their meals. She paused, tray balanced perfectly on her left hand, her attention drawn to the main dining room visible through a gap in the velvet curtains. A man had entered. He wore a dark jacket with the hood pulled up, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, and even from a distance Emily could sense something wrong about his posture, his energy. He moved with jerky intensity, his head swiveling as he scanned the restaurant. Jennifer, the manager, approached him with her professional smile. "Good evening, sir. Do you have a reservation?" The man ignored her completely, his gaze still searching the room. Then, with sudden purpose, he turned toward the VIP section. Time seemed to slow down in that strange way it sometimes does when the brain recognizes danger, before the conscious mind catches up. Emily saw the man's hand emerge from his pocket, saw the dark metal object that materialized in his grip, saw his arm coming up and his body turning toward the VIP curtain, toward Jonathan Marino. The word formed in Emily's mind before she could process what it meant. Gun. Her body reacted before her thoughts could organize themselves. She was standing between the gunman and the VIP section, holding a metal serving tray loaded with desserts and espresso cups. Some instinct, survival, heroism, or pure accident, made her raise the tray in front of her just as the man's arm finished its arc. The sound was impossibly loud, like the world cracking open. Emily felt the impact through the tray, a massive jolt that traveled up her arms and made her stumble backward. The desserts flew everywhere. An espresso cup shattered against the wall. Her ears rang with a high-pitched whine that drowned out everything else. The metal tray in her hands had a fresh dent in it, slightly off-center, and a gouge where the bullet had impacted at an angle and ricocheted away, embedding itself in the wooden crown molding above the VIP entrance. For a heartbeat, everything froze. The entire restaurant seemed suspended in amber. Diners with forks halfway to their mouths, servers stopped mid-step, the gunman staring at Emily with an expression of complete disbelief. Then chaos erupted. Screams filled the air as customers dove under tables or scrambled toward exits. More gunshots rang out, not from the initial attacker but from Marino's men, who had produced weapons from concealed holsters with practiced speed. The gray-haired man tackled the gunman before he could fire again, slamming him to the ground with brutal efficiency. Emily stood in the middle of it all, still holding the dented tray, her mind struggling to catch up with what had just happened. Her hands were shaking, her ears were ringing. Time felt fractured, moving too fast and too slow simultaneously. Someone grabbed her arm, Jennifer, pulling her away from the chaos. "Emily? Emily, are you hurt? Did you get hit?" Emily shook her head mutely, unable to form words. She wasn't hurt. The bullet hadn't touched her. It had hit the tray, and the angle had been just right or just wrong for it to deflect away instead of punching through. Through the confusion, she saw Jonathan Marino standing in the VIP section, one hand on the back of his chair for support, staring directly at her. His expression was unlike anything she'd seen before. Shock, calculation, and something else she couldn't quite identify. His men had surrounded him instantly, forming a protective barrier, but he wasn't looking at them or at the subdued gunman on the floor. He was staring at Emily with the intensity of someone who had just witnessed something impossible. The next few minutes were a blur. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing rapidly closer. Marino's men had the gunman pinned to the floor, his weapon kicked safely away. Jennifer was trying to calm panicked customers while simultaneously checking on staff. Marco appeared from the kitchen, face pale, trying to assess the damage. Emily remained frozen, the dented tray still in her hands, her entire body beginning to shake as adrenaline flooded her system. One of Marino's men, the gray-haired one who'd tackled the shooter, approached her. "You okay, miss?" His voice was surprisingly gentle given what she'd just witnessed him do. I think so," Emily managed, her voice sounding strange and distant to her own ears. "That was either the bravest or the luckiest thing I've ever seen," he said, taking the tray from her trembling hands. He examined the dent, the trajectory mark, his experienced eyes doing calculations. Bullet hit at maybe a 30-degree angle. If it had been straight on, or if you'd been holding the tray any other way. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The police burst through the door, weapons drawn, shouting for everyone to get down. Emily complied automatically, her legs suddenly feeling like water. She sank to her knees, hands visible, her mind still replaying the moment over and over like a stuck video. She'd just deflected a bullet with a serving tray. She'd just saved someone's life. She'd just stepped into something she didn't understand. The restaurant became a crime scene. Yellow tape went up. Detectives arrived. Witnesses were separated and questioned. The gunman, now identified as a 26-year-old man with a record of minor offenses but nothing suggesting this kind of violence, was handcuffed and read his rights while emergency medical technicians checked him for injuries. Emily sat in one of the booths, a shock blanket around her shoulders despite not feeling cold, watching the controlled chaos of a police investigation unfold around her. A detective sat across from her, Detective Sarah Chen, mid-40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor softened slightly by what might have been sympathy. "Let's go through it one more time, Ms. Carter," Detective Chen said, her pen poised over a notepad. "You were carrying a tray of desserts and coffee when you heard the front door open?" Emily nodded, her voice steadier now, though her hand still trembled slightly when she lifted the water glass someone had provided. "Yes, it was about 9:47, maybe 9:48. I was coming from the kitchen to deliver to the VIP section. And then what did you see? A man came in. He had a dark jacket, hood up. He looked wrong, the way he was moving, searching for something, or someone." Emily paused, closing her eyes to recall the details. Jennifer went to greet him, but he ignored her. He was looking toward the VIP section. "That's when you saw the weapon?" "Yes." He pulled it from his pocket and raised his arm. "I was standing between him and the VIP entrance. I didn't think. I raised the tray. I heard the shot, felt the impact, and then everything went crazy." Detective Chen made notes, her expression neutral. "You didn't know who was in the VIP section?" "No. I mean, I was serving them, but I didn't know who they were. I don't usually work VIP." Emily hesitated, then added, "Should I have known?" The detective didn't answer directly. "You just acted on instinct? Saw a gun and used what you had to protect yourself?" "And whoever was behind me," Emily said. "I wasn't thinking about protecting anyone specific. I just saw a gun pointing at me, and I put something between me and it." This was technically true. Emily had seen the gun, had raised the tray, but the speed of it all meant her conscious mind hadn't really made decisions so much as her body had reacted. Whether she was protecting herself or the people in VIP or both was something she honestly couldn't answer. Detective Chen studied her for a long moment. "You realize how incredibly lucky you are? That angle, that timing. If any of it had been slightly different, we'd be having a very different conversation right now." "I know," Emily whispered. And she did. The reality of how close she'd come to dying was beginning to sink in, making her feel simultaneously numb and hyper-aware. Across the restaurant, Emily could see another detective questioning Jonathan Marino. He sat with perfect posture, his suit somehow still immaculate despite the violence that had erupted around him. His expression was calm, controlled, giving nothing away as he answered questions. His men stood nearby, equally composed, their earlier weapons presumably secured away before the police arrived. As if sensing her gaze, Marino's eyes flicked toward her. For a moment, their eyes met across the chaos of the crime scene. His expression was unreadable, but the intensity of his stare made Emily's breath catch. Then he returned his attention to the detective, and the moment passed. "Ms. Carter?" Detective Chen's voice pulled Emily back. "You with me?" "Sorry. Yes, I'm here. Is there anything else you remember? Any detail, no matter how small?" Emily thought hard, replaying those terrible seconds. He seemed surprised. The gunman, when he saw me with the tray, like he hadn't expected anyone to be there. And after the bullet hit the tray, he looked confused, like he couldn't believe what happened. "That tracks," Detective Chen said. "According to witnesses, he hesitated after the first shot. That's when Mr. Marino's security personnel subdued him. If he'd kept shooting," she trailed off meaningfully. Emily swallowed hard. "If he'd kept shooting, she would almost certainly be dead, and probably several other people too." "Can I go home?" Emily asked quietly. "I've told you everything I remember." Detective Chen nodded, handing Emily a business card. "We'll need you to come down to the station tomorrow to give a formal statement and look at some photos for identification purposes. But yes, you can go. Is there someone who can drive you? You shouldn't be alone after something like this." "I'll call someone," Emily lied. There wasn't anyone to call. No boyfriend, her few friends all working their own late shifts, her mother living 2 states away. but she didn't want the detective worrying about her or assigning a uniformed officer to babysit her. She stood on shaky legs, the shock blanket slipping from her shoulders. Jennifer appeared immediately, having been hovering nearby. "Emily, honey, take as much time as you need. A week, 2 weeks, whatever you need to process this. Paid leave," she said, which was generous considering Rossi's wasn't exactly known for its employee benefits. "Thank you," Emily managed. She just wanted to leave, to get to her small apartment and lock the door and try to convince herself this had all been some kind of surreal nightmare. As she moved toward the employee exit to retrieve her jacket, she found her path blocked by one of Marino's men, the gray-haired one who'd spoken to her earlier. "Mr. Marino would like to speak with you for a moment," he said quietly. It wasn't quite a request, but it wasn't quite a command either. Emily's first instinct was to refuse, to say she'd given her statement and just wanted to go home. But something in the man's eyes, not threatening, but serious, made her hesitate. "Just for a moment," he repeated. "Please." Against her better judgment, Emily nodded. The man led her back toward the VIP section, which had been largely preserved as part of the crime scene, but was now being photographed and catalogued by forensics teams. Jonathan Marino stood near the entrance, having apparently just finished with the detective. Up close, Emily could see the barely perceptible signs of strain around his eyes, the slight tension in his jaw. This man had nearly died tonight, and he was holding it together through sheer force of will. When he saw Emily approaching, he straightened slightly, his eyes doing that scanning thing again, as if he was trying to read her at a molecular level. "Ms. Carter," he said, his voice deep and controlled. "I believe introductions are in order given the circumstances. I'm Jonathan Marino." He extended his hand, and after a brief hesitation, Emily shook it. His grip was firm but not crushing. His hand warmed despite the cold efficiency in his eyes. "Emily Carter," she replied, though he obviously already knew her name. "What you did tonight?" Marino paused, seeming to search for words, which struck Emily as unusual for a man who appeared to measure every syllable before speaking. "I owe you my life. That's not a debt I take lightly." "I didn't really do anything," Emily said quickly. "It was just luck. I happened to be holding a tray in the right place at the right time." Marino's expression suggested he didn't quite believe that, or perhaps found the explanation too simple. "Nevertheless, the outcome is the same. A man tried to end my life tonight, and you prevented it. Whether by luck or instinct or something else entirely, you saved me." Emily didn't know what to say to that. The weight of his gratitude felt oddly heavy, like accepting it would mean accepting something more than just his thanks. "I need to go home," Emily said finally. "It's been a very long night." Marino nodded slowly. "Of course. But before you go, I want you to have this." He produced a business card from his jacket pocket, heavy cardstock, expensive, with simply a name and phone number embossed in dark ink. "If you need anything, and I mean anything, you call that number. Legal help, medical expenses, whatever consequences arise from tonight's events. I take care of people who help me." Emily took the card reluctantly, feeling like she was accepting something she didn't fully understand. "Thank you, but I'm fine. Really. Humor me," Marino said, and there was something in his voice that suggested this wasn't really optional. "Keep the card. Use it if you need it." The gray-haired man reappeared at Emily's elbow. "Marcus will make sure you get home safely," Marino continued. "No arguments, someone just tried to kill me in a public place. That means someone was planning this, knew where I'd be. Until we understand the full situation, anyone associated with tonight is potentially at risk." The implication sent a chill down Emily's spine. She hadn't considered that she might be in danger beyond the immediate moment of violence. "You think I'm in danger? I think it's better to be cautious," Marino said carefully. "Marcus will see you home and make sure your building is secure. Consider it payment for the life debt I now owe you." Emily wanted to argue, wanted to insist she was fine and could take care of herself. But the exhaustion was overwhelming, and the idea of not having to walk through dark streets alone at nearly midnight after watching someone try to murder a man 3 feet away from her was suddenly appealing. "Okay," she agreed quietly. "Thank you." Marino nodded, and Emily thought she saw something in his expression. Relief, maybe, or satisfaction. Then Marcus was guiding her toward the side exit, and she was stepping out into the cold November night, the rain having stopped, but the street still wet and reflective. A black SUV was parked at the curb, expensive and gleaming even in the dim light. Marcus opened the back door for her, Actual chivalry or just habit from a lifetime of working for someone important? Emily couldn't tell. She slid into the leather interior, the warmth and comfort of the vehicle a stark contrast to her usual bus rides. Marcus got in the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled smoothly into traffic. Emily gave him her address, a modest apartment building in a neighborhood that was trying hard to gentrify but hadn't quite made it yet. They drove in silence for several minutes, Emily staring out the window at the city passing by, everything looking slightly surreal after the night's events. "You did good back there," Marcus said finally, his gruff voice cutting through the quiet. "Steady under pressure, that's rare." "I was terrified," Emily admitted. "Being brave and being terrified aren't opposites," Marcus replied. "Brave is being terrified and doing what needs doing anyway. You stepped between a gun and its target. Most people freeze. You moved." Emily didn't feel brave. She felt exhausted and shaky, and like she might cry at any moment. But she appreciated the sentiment. They pulled up in front of her building, a 4-story brick structure with questionable heating and enthusiastic cockroaches, but rent she could afford. Marcus parked and got out, opening her door before she could do it herself. "I'll walk you up," he said. And again, it wasn't really a question. They entered the building. No doorman, no security, just a lobby with mailboxes and stairs that creaked. Emily's apartment was on the 3rd floor, and she was acutely aware of how shabby everything must look to someone who drove luxury SUVs and worked for a man who ordered $400 wine without blinking. She unlocked her door, 2 deadbolts and a chain, installed herself after a break-in 2 years ago, and Marcus did a quick sweep of her small apartment. 1 bedroom, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, a living room with secondhand furniture and walls decorated with photographs and postcards from places she'd never been but dreamed of visiting. "Locks are good," Marcus said, returning to the doorway. "Keep them engaged. Don't open for anyone you don't know. You have my number now. It's on the back of Mr. Marino's card. Anything feels wrong, anything at all, you call immediately." "Understood? Understood?" Emily echoed, feeling like she'd somehow enrolled in a program she didn't remember signing up for. Marcus nodded once, a gesture that felt like approval or acknowledgement, and then he was gone, his footsteps receding down the stairs. Emily closed the door, engaged both deadbolts in the chain, and then stood in her tiny apartment, still wearing her work uniform, the events of the evening crashing over her like a delayed tidal wave. She'd nearly died tonight. She'd saved a man's life. She'd deflected a bullet with a serving tray. Emily walked to her kitchen, poured herself a glass of water with shaking hands, and finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had happened. The glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the linoleum floor, and she sank down onto her couch and began to cry, great, gasping sobs that shook her entire body. Tomorrow she'd have to go to the police station. Tomorrow she'd have to relive it all in formal statements. Tomorrow she'd have to figure out what it meant that a man who was clearly more than just a businessman now considered himself in her debt. But tonight, she just cried. Emily didn't sleep. She lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the familiar sounds of her building, pipes groaning, neighbors' televisions through thin walls, the occasional car passing on the street below. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the gunman's face, heard the explosive sound of the shot, felt the impact reverberating through the metal tray into her arms. Around 3 a.m., she gave up trying to sleep and made tea, sitting at her small kitchen table in the dark. Jonathan Marino's business card sat in front of her, the embossed lettering catching what little light came through the window from the street lamp outside. Who was he, really? The detective had asked if she knew who was in VIP, as if she should have known. The way his men moved, the way they'd produced weapons and neutralized the threat with professional efficiency, the way Marino himself had commanded the space even in the midst of chaos. None of that was normal businessman behavior. Emily pulled out her phone and, against her better judgment, typed Jonathan Marino Chicago into the search engine. The results were interesting. Several hits for a Marino consulting group, described as a business advisory firm with interests in real estate, restaurants, and import and export. Professional website, corporate photos, all very legitimate looking. Then there were society page mentions, charity galas, business awards, a photograph of Marino in a tuxedo shaking hands with the mayor. But there were also gaps. Conspicuous absences of the kind of detailed personal information that usually littered the internet. No social media presence, no personal interviews. Even his Wikipedia page was surprisingly sparse, listing only basic business ventures and philanthropic activities. And then, buried several pages deep in her search, a mention in a blog about organized crime in Chicago. Quickly deleted content, only cached copies remaining. The post suggested connections between various business entities and old family names that went back generations in the city's less legal enterprises. Emily closed her browser, her tea suddenly tasting bitter in her mouth. She'd saved the life of someone who might be, probably was, involved in exactly the kind of world she'd spent her entire life avoiding. She should forget about it. Give her statement to the police, accept whatever therapy the city offered to trauma victims, and go back to her normal life. Serving tables, saving pennies, dreaming of culinary school. But even as she thought it, Emily knew normal was no longer an option. The gunman had tried to kill Marino in a public place, which meant someone wanted him dead badly enough to risk massive collateral damage, and she was now associated with him in the mind of whoever that someone was. The thought made her apartment, which had always felt safe despite its shabby edges, suddenly feel very vulnerable. The locks Marcus had approved seemed inadequate. The darkness outside her windows felt threatening rather than peaceful. She was still sitting at her kitchen table when her phone buzzed around 6:30 a.m., startling her badly enough that she nearly knocked over her cold tea. Unknown number. Her thumb hovered over the decline button. Then, remembering Marcus's instructions to call if anything felt wrong, she answered. "Hello? Ms. Carter. It's Jonathan Marino." His voice was unmistakable, even filtered through phone speakers. Deep, controlled, precise. Emily sat up straighter automatically, as if he could see her through the connection. "Mr. Marino, is everything all right?" It seemed like an absurd question given the circumstances, but it was 6:30 in the morning. "I apologize for the early call. I wanted to check that you made it home safely and that you're managing." There was something in his tone that suggested this wasn't just politeness. He was actually asking, actually concerned in a way that seemed genuine despite barely knowing her. "I'm okay," Emily lied. "Couldn't sleep, but I'm okay." A pause on the other end. "I imagine sleep is difficult after what you experienced. Have you considered speaking with someone? I can arrange for a professional, someone with experience in trauma counseling." "The police mentioned resources," Emily said, not wanting to accept more from this man she didn't understand. "Police resources are often understaffed and overwhelmed," Marino replied. "I'm offering something better, private, confidential, effective, no cost to you." "Why are you doing this?" Emily asked before she could stop herself. "I mean, I understand gratitude, but this seems like more than that." Another pause, longer this time. When Marino spoke again, his voice had a different quality, less formal, more honest. "Because what happened last night was my fault, not the attempt on my life. I've made enemies. That comes with territory. But you were there because I chose to eat at Rossi's. You nearly died because of decisions I made, a life I lead. The least I can do is ensure you have support dealing with the consequences." There was something almost vulnerable in the admission, a crack in the controlled facade. Emily found herself responding to it despite her caution. "I appreciate that," she said quietly. "But I'm not sure I'm ready to accept help from someone I don't know. No offense." "None taken. It's a reasonable position." A slight pause. "Ms. Carter, I'm going to be direct because I think you deserve that. The man who tried to kill me last night will be questioned, but he's unlikely to provide useful information. People who attempt this kind of thing rarely work alone, and they're even more rarely the primary decision-maker. Which means whoever wanted me dead is still out there, and they may view you as a loose end, or a witness who needs to be silenced." Emily's blood ran cold. She thought of this in abstract terms, but hearing it stated so baldly made it terrifyingly real. "The police," she started, "will do their best with limited resources," Marino continued, "but I can offer more comprehensive protection. I'm not asking you to trust me, but I am asking you to be pragmatic. You saved my life. Let me help keep you safe while this situation resolves itself." Emily's hand tightened on her phone. Every instinct screamed that getting more involved with Jonathan Marino was a terrible idea. But he was right about one thing. She was pragmatic. She'd had to be. And pretending she wasn't potentially in danger wouldn't make that danger disappear. "What kind of protection?" she asked carefully. "First, we need to talk. In person, in a secure location. There are things you need to understand about what happened and what might happen next. Marcus can pick you up at 10 a.m., bring you to my office. We'll talk. I'll answer your questions honestly, and then you can decide what level of precaution you're comfortable with. No pressure, no obligation. Just information and options." Emily looked at the clock. 6:42 a.m. 3 hours to decide whether to step further into this world or try to step back. Ms. Carter? Marino's voice pulled her back to the conversation. I'll think about it, Emily said. Can I call you back? Of course, you have my card. Right, I'll let you know. Thank you. And Ms. Carter, be careful today. Don't deviate from your usual routine. Don't speak to anyone about last night beyond what the police need, and if anything at all feels wrong, call Marcus immediately. His number is on the back of my card. I will. They ended the call, and Emily sat in her apartment as dawn light began filtering through her windows, turning everything gray and uncertain. Her phone showed 6:45 a.m. At 10 a.m. a car would arrive, or wouldn't, depending on what she decided. She looked at Marino's card again, at the embossed numbers that represented a choice. Stay in her small, safe world and hope the danger passed her by, or step into the unknown with a man who might be criminal, might be dangerous, but who had just offered her something no one else could: honest information and real protection. Emily picked up her phone and typed a single message to the number on the card. I'll be ready at 10. The response came back almost immediately. Smart choice. See you then. As the sun rose over Chicago, Emily Carter stood at her window, watching the city wake up, and wondered what she'd just agreed to. Behind her, on the kitchen table, the dented serving tray from Rossi's sat like a monument to the moment her life had changed. She'd deflected a bullet last night. But the question now was, what had she deflected herself into? Emily stood at her bathroom mirror at 8:30 a.m., studying the dark circles beneath her eyes. She hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the gunman's face, heard the explosive crack of the bullet hitting the metal tray. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Black SUV outside your building. Take your time. Marcus. She dressed in her most professional outfit, black slacks and a cream blouse, and grabbed her jacket. At the door she paused, hand on the knob, giving herself one last chance to change her mind. But Marino's words echoed in her head. Whoever wanted me dead is still out there. She opened the door and headed downstairs. Marcus was waiting by the same black SUV from last night. Sleep at all? Not really, Emily admitted as he opened the door. I've had worse nights, Marcus replied, which wasn't really an answer. They drove toward downtown Chicago, the neighborhoods transforming from modest apartments to gleaming corporate towers. Marcus navigated with practiced efficiency, finally pulling into the underground garage of a sleek glass building. He led her to a private elevator that climbed to the 35th floor. The doors opened onto a reception area that redefined Emily's understanding of professional elegance. Dark wood, leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of Chicago and Lake Michigan. This way, Marcus said, leading her down a hallway to corner office with double doors. Jonathan Marino's office was enormous, with windows on 2 walls and a view that seemed to stretch forever. He stood by the windows, phone pressed to his ear. When he saw Emily, he concluded his call immediately. Ms. Carter, thank you for coming. He crossed the room, shaking her hand with that same controlled strength. Please sit. He gestured to a seating area rather than his formal desk. Emily chose a leather chair while Marino took the sofa across from her. Can I offer you coffee? Please, Emily said, needing caffeine desperately. Marino prepared 2 espressos at a machine that clearly saw regular use. The coffee was excellent, rich and smooth. Emily wrapped her hands around the warm cup. I promised you honest answers, Marino said, settling back. So let me start with what you probably already suspect. The Marino family has been part of Chicago's underworld for 3 generations. My grandfather started during Prohibition, my father expanded the business, and I inherited both legitimate and less legitimate operations when he died 15 years ago. The bluntness shocked Emily. She'd expected denials, careful language. Instead, he was simply stating facts. Why tell me this? She asked. Because you deserve to know what you've become entangled with. Last night you saved my life, and that's connected you to me in the eyes of anyone who wishes me harm. Pretending otherwise would be dishonest and dangerous. He took a sip of coffee and continued. I run several businesses, restaurants, real estate, import, export. Some completely legal, some gray area, some explicitly illegal. I won't insult your intelligence by pretending I'm just a businessman, but I also operate by certain principles. I don't harm innocents. I take care of people who work for me, and I keep my word. The man who tried to kill you? Emily asked. Is the result of an internal dispute? Someone in my organization is making a play for power. I have suspicions. My cousin Vincent has been ambitious lately, but suspicion isn't proof. A knock interrupted them. A woman in a sharp pantsuit entered. Ms. Carter, I'm Sophia Reyes, Mr. Marino's attorney. I've been reviewing the police reports from last night. Sophia sat beside Marino, opening her portfolio. The gunman, Dennis Crawford, claims he acted alone over a gambling debt. Nobody believes that. The police want you to come in today for a formal statement. I'd like to accompany you to ensure your rights are protected. I'm just a witness, Emily said. A witness in an attempted murder case involving organized crime, Sophia replied gently. Having representation protects you from inadvertently saying something that could complicate your life later. Another knock admitted a younger man with messy hair and a laptop. Boss, you wanted... Oh, sorry. He stopped, seeing Emily. Tommy Chen, my technology specialist, Marino introduced. Emily Carter, the waitress who deflected the bullet. Tommy's eyes lit up. I've been analyzing the footage. The sedan that dropped Crawford was stolen from O'Hare. Someone planned this carefully. He didn't act alone despite what he's claiming. After Sophia and Tommy left, Marino refreshed their coffees. Let's talk about you, your safety, your future, and what I can offer. What do you mean? Emily asked warily. I own several restaurants. One, Marino's Crown, is significantly more upscale than Rossi's. I'm offering you a position as assistant manager. Salary, benefits, career path. It's also protective custody, I won't lie about that. Having you close means I can ensure your safety while we resolve this situation. So I'd be bait, Emily said flatly. No, you'd be protected. There's a difference. What I'm offering is a secure position with professionals ensuring nothing happens to you. Emily stood, moving to the windows. And if I say no, I'll still provide security, but you'll be more exposed, more vulnerable. I'm asking you to accept reality. Someone tried to kill me in a public place. Until we resolve this, you're at risk. I'm offering the safest scenario, while also giving you better employment. Marino drove Emily to Marino's Crown in his personal car, a dark blue Audi. The restaurant was located in the Gold Coast, one of Chicago's most affluent neighborhoods. They entered through the back, directly into the kitchen. Emily's professional instincts engaged immediately. The space was spectacular. Commercial equipment that looked brand new, organizational systems that made sense, immaculate cleanliness. A woman in chef's whites looked up. Mr. Marino. Chef Carmen, this is Emily Carter. Emily, Chef Carmen Rodriguez. Chef Carmen's handshake was firm, her hands bearing kitchen scars. You're from Rossi's. The incident. Quick thinking. Kitchen reflexes serving you well. She gave Emily a comprehensive tour. The kitchen was everything Emily had dreamed of. Properly equipped, well-staffed, organized. They did family meal before service, tested new recipes, ran training programs for staff development. The dining room took Emily's breath away. High ceilings with restored molding, crisp linens, fresh flowers, perfect lighting. Large windows overlooked tree-lined streets. The general manager, Robert Chang, explained the assistant manager role, scheduling, inventory, customer relations, staff training. The salary was nearly double what Emily made at both her current jobs combined. The benefits included health insurance and professional development funding. Our staff retention is significantly higher than industry average, Robert explained. Mr. Marino believes in taking care of people who take care of his establishments. Emily looked around the beautiful space, thought about the professional kitchen, the organized systems. It was an incredible opportunity. But it came with strings attached to a world where violence was sometimes necessary. It's impressive, Emily said honestly. I need time to process this. Of course, Marino said. We should get you to the police station. Sophia will be waiting. The police station was institutional beige walls and fluorescent lights. Detective Chen met them in her small office, looking tired from working through the night. Ms. Carter, thank you for coming. I need you to walk me through the events again, as detailed as possible. The interview lasted 90 minutes. Chen asked about every detail: Emily's shift, the VIP party's arrival, the gunman's entrance, the exact sequence of events. When you raised the tray, Chen asked, were you protecting yourself or the VIP section? Honest answer: I saw a gun pointing toward me and I put something between me and it. Pure instinct. Chen showed her photographs. Emily recognized some of Marino's men, but not Vincent Marino, who Chen said was a person of interest. Finally, Chen sat back. Ms. Carter, I'm going to be direct. Jonathan Marino is a person of significant interest to law enforcement. By accepting his protection and employment, you're entering a world that could complicate your life in ways you might not anticipate. I just want you to understand that before you make choices that might be hard to reverse. I understand, Emily said. Thank you. In the car afterward, Marino spoke quietly. I need a decision. The job offer stands. The protection stands. But I need to know if you're in or if we're finding another arrangement. Emily looked out at Chicago passing by. Her city, familiar streets, a life that had been simple if difficult. Accepting meant stepping away from that simplicity, but it also meant survival, security, a chance at a real career. I'll do it, Emily said quietly. I'll take the job at Marino's Crown. She felt Marino's relief. Thank you. You won't regret this. I hope not, Emily replied. They drove to her apartment to collect belongings. Marino suggested she stay in a secure hotel for a few nights. Marcus came up with her, doing a security sweep while Emily packed. Can I give you some advice? Marcus asked. Please, don't trust anyone, not me, not Sophia, not even Mr. Marino, though I'd trust him with my life. Someone inside betrayed him. Until we know who, everyone is potentially suspect. He handed her a burner phone. My direct line. Use it if you need it. Marcus drove her to a boutique hotel in River North. Her suite was more spacious than her entire apartment with breathtaking views. Security is on this floor, Marcus explained. You're safe here. After he left, Emily stood at the window, trying to process everything. 24 hours ago, she'd been a struggling waitress. Now she was under protection of someone who admitted to running criminal operations. Her regular phone buzzed. Unknown number. Emily Carter? A male voice, unfamiliar. Who is this? Someone who knows you made a mistake last night. Walking into Jonathan Marino's world is going to get you killed. Get out while you still can. The line went dead. Emily stood frozen, heart hammering. She grabbed the burner phone and called Marcus. He answered immediately. What's wrong? I just got a call. Someone telling me staying with Marino would get me killed. Read me the number. After a moment. Burner phone. Untraceable. I'm sending someone to your room. Don't open for anyone except someone who says, Marcus sent me for Ms. Carter. Understand? Understood. Emily moved away from the windows, feeling exposed. Someone had found her number within hours of accepting Marino's protection. Marcus's words echoed. Don't trust anyone. A knock at the door. Ms. Carter? Marcus sent me. Emily checked the peephole. A man in a dark suit, professional bearing. I'm okay, she called. I'll be stationed in the hallway. You're safe here. Safe, Emily thought. In Marino's world, safety might be temporary rather than permanent. She returned to the window, watching city lights emerge as afternoon became evening. Someone out there was watching, waiting, planning. Emily just hoped she'd survive long enough to figure out who. Emily's first day at Marino's Crown began at 3:00 p.m. on a cold Tuesday afternoon. She'd spent the previous 3 days in the hotel suite, giving her statement to police, fielding calls from her former employers, and trying to adjust to the surreal reality of her new circumstances. The threatening phone call hadn't repeated itself, but its echo lingered in her mind like a persistent shadow. Marcus picked her up at 2:30, driving her through downtown traffic in comfortable silence. Emily had learned that Marcus wasn't much for small talk, which she appreciated. Her nerves were already stretched thin without having to maintain polite conversation. The restaurant looked different in afternoon light. Still elegant, but less intimidating somehow. Robert Chang met her at the door, his professional smile warm and genuine. Emily, welcome. Let's get you oriented before the chaos of dinner service begins. The next 2 hours were a whirlwind of information. Robert walked her through the reservation system, the seating charts, the detailed profiles they kept on regular customers, dietary restrictions, preferred tables, anniversary dates, even which staff members they got along with best. Attention to detail is what separates good restaurants from exceptional ones, Robert explained as they reviewed the evening's reservations on his computer. Mrs. Davidson always sits at table 12 by the window. Senator Brennan prefers the private booth in the back. The Chungs celebrate their anniversary on the 15th of every month and always order the tasting menu. Emily absorbed it all, her mind cataloging the information with the same efficiency she'd developed working multiple jobs. The organizational systems made sense. The staff seemed competent and content, and the operation ran with the precision of a well-conducted orchestra. Chef Carmen appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. Emily, you'll join us for family meal. It's tradition. Everyone eats together before service. The staff dining area filled with employees, servers, kitchen staff, bartenders, hosts. They gathered around a long table laden with food that Chef Carmen had prepared specifically for this meal. It wasn't fancy, just good, honest cooking. Roasted chicken, seasoned vegetables, fresh bread, a simple salad. Emily found herself seated between a server named Michelle, who'd been working at Marino's Crown for 3 years, and a sous chef named David, who had ambitions of opening his own place someday. "So you're the woman from the news," Michelle said, not unkindly. "The Rossi's incident." Emily tensed slightly. "That's me. Must have been terrifying," David added, passing her the breadbasket. "But also kind of incredible. Deflecting a bullet with a tray? That's movie-level stuff." "It was just reflex," Emily said, uncomfortable with the attention. "Wrong place, right time. Or right place, wrong time. I'm still not sure which. Either way, welcome to the team," Michelle said, raising her water glass in a casual toast. "We're glad to have you." The gesture, simple as it was, made Emily feel unexpectedly emotional. These people didn't seem to care about the circumstances that brought her here. They were just welcoming a new colleague. It was the first moment since the shooting that felt remotely normal. After family meal, the restaurant transformed. Lights were adjusted, music levels set, final table checks completed. Emily positioned herself near the host stand with Robert, observing as the first guests began arriving at 5:30. "Your primary role tonight is to watch and learn," Robert explained. "Shadow me. See how we handle different situations. Get a feel for the rhythm of service. Tomorrow you'll start taking on more responsibilities." Emily watched as Robert orchestrated the evening with practiced grace. He greeted regulars by name, smoothly managed a couple who arrived without reservations, discreetly handled a complaint about wine temperature, and coordinated with the kitchen on timing for a large party's courses. It was impressive, the way he made it all look effortless when Emily could see the dozens of small decisions and adjustments happening constantly. This was management at a level she'd never experienced, not just reacting to problems, but anticipating them and preventing them before they materialized. Around 7:30 p.m., Jonathan Marino arrived. Emily hadn't expected to see him. He wasn't on the reservation list, but he entered through a private side door accompanied by 2 men Emily recognized from the VIP section at Rossi's. He wore a charcoal suit, his presence commanding attention without demanding it. His eyes found Emily immediately, and he offered a slight nod of acknowledgement before Robert hurried over to greet him. "Mr. Marino, we weren't expecting you tonight. Your usual table? Please. And Robert, I'd like Emily to handle our service this evening if she's comfortable with that." Robert glanced at Emily questioningly. She nodded, despite her nerves. "Of course." Marino's usual table was in a semi-private corner with good sight lines to both entrances and the main dining room, strategic positioning that Emily was beginning to recognize as habitual for him. She approached with menus and water, her professional mask firmly in place. "Good evening, Mr. Marino. Welcome to Marino's Crown." A slight smile played at the corner of his mouth. Amusement at the formality, perhaps. "Emily, how was your first day?" "Educational," she replied honestly. "Robert's been an excellent teacher. He's one of the best in the business. These are my associates, Frank and Leo. Gentlemen, this is Emily Carter, our new assistant manager." Both men nodded politely. Frank was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and sharp eyes. Leo was younger, built like someone who spent serious time in the gym, with a scar along his jawline that suggested his past had included physical confrontation. Emily took their drink orders and retreated, her heart beating faster than the situation warranted. There was something different about serving Marino here, in his own establishment, where he was clearly the owner, rather than just another customer. Throughout the evening, she returned to check on their table, refill drinks, coordinate with the kitchen on their courses. Marino was an attentive diner, commenting thoughtfully on each dish, asking questions about preparation that showed genuine interest rather than just making conversation. During one visit to their table, Emily overheard part of their conversation as she refilled water glasses. "Can't keep stalling the decision," Frank was saying quietly. "Vincent is getting impatient, and impatient men make stupid choices. Let him be impatient," Marino replied, his voice calm but hard. "I'm not making moves based on his timeline. We need proof before we act, or we risk turning suspicion into certainty and allies into enemies." Emily moved away before she could hear more, but the words stuck with her. Vincent, the cousin Detective Chen had mentioned. the one suspected of orchestrating the attack. Whatever was happening within Marino's organization, it clearly wasn't resolved. Over the next 2 weeks, Emily settled into her new role with surprising ease. The work was challenging but manageable. The staff was welcoming, and the regular paycheck with benefits felt like winning a small lottery. She moved from the hotel into a better apartment. Still modest, but in a safer neighborhood with actual security and updated appliances. Marcus drove her to and from work every day, a routine that quickly became comfortable. She learned that he'd been with Marino for 12 years, had served in the Marines before that, and had a daughter in college studying engineering. He showed her pictures once, his face softening with unmistakable pride. "She's the first person in our family to go to college," he'd said. "Mr. Marino pays her tuition, says investing in people's families is investing in their loyalty, but, honestly, I think he just likes helping when he can." It was details like this that complicated Emily's understanding of Jonathan Marino. He was undeniably involved in illegal activities, ran an organization that used violence as a tool, and operated in a world where betrayal was common currency. But he also paid for his security chief's daughter's education, ensured his restaurant staff had excellent benefits, and treated everyone from the dishwasher to the general manager with the same respectful courtesy. Marino himself began visiting the restaurant regularly, 2 or 3 times a week, usually for late dinners after what Emily assumed were business meetings. He always requested service from whoever was working, not specifically Emily, though they often ended up talking when she managed his table. Their conversations started professionally, discussions about the restaurant's operations, customer feedback, staff performance, but gradually, they became more personal. Marino asked about her culinary school dreams, her background, what had brought her to Chicago. Emily found herself sharing more than she'd intended, something about his focused attention making it easy to talk. "My mother got sick when I was 22, Emily explained one evening while Marino lingered over coffee after his dinner companions had departed. "Breast cancer. The medical bills were catastrophic, even with insurance. I dropped out of community college to work full-time, help pay for treatment. She recovered, thank God, but by then I was so deep in debt that going back to school seemed impossible." Marino listened without interrupting, his dark eyes thoughtful. "And yet you still want to pursue cooking professionally?" "It's what I love," Emily said simply. "Working in a kitchen, creating something that brings people joy and nourishment. There's something honest about it. Pure, in a way. You put in skill and care, and you get out something tangible and real. Not unlike building a legitimate business," Marino observed. "You invest resources and integrity, and you create something that provides value and employment." Emily studied him, sensing subtext in the comment. "Is that what you're trying to do? Build more legitimate businesses?" Marino's expression became guarded, but not closed off. "Walk with me. I'd like to show you something." They left through the private entrance, Marcus materializing from wherever he'd been stationed to follow at a discreet distance. The November night was cold, frost forming on car windshields, their breath visible in the air. Marino led her 2 blocks to a construction site, a building being renovated, scaffolding and plastic sheeting covering the facade. He used a key to open a temporary door, leading Emily inside. The interior was gutted but taking shape. Even in its incomplete state, Emily could see it was going to be something special. High ceilings, an open floor plan, industrial details being preserved and integrated with modern elements. "This will be a culinary training center," Marino explained, his voice echoing slightly in the empty space. "Professional-grade kitchens, classrooms, equipment that aspiring chefs can't typically afford to train on. We'll offer programs for people who want to enter the industry but don't have the resources for traditional culinary schools. Scholarships for those who need them, job placement assistance, connections to restaurants looking for trained staff." Emily stared at him, surprised. "You're building a culinary school?" "A training center," Marino corrected. "Not accredited for degrees, but focused on practical skills and employment opportunities. There are talented people in this city who'll never get a chance because they can't afford $50,000 for culinary school. This creates another path." "Why?" Emily asked. "I mean, it's wonderful, but why invest in this?" Marino was quiet for a moment, running his hand along an exposed brick wall. "My grandfather used to say that a man who only takes from his community is a parasite, but a man who gives back becomes part of its foundation. I've taken plenty, Emily. From this city, from the people in it. Some of that taking was necessary, some was justifiable, and some I'm not proud of. This is giving back." building something clean that helps people create better futures. There was unexpected vulnerability in his voice, a crack in his usual controlled facade. Emily saw something in that moment, not just the criminal organization boss or the successful businessman, but a man genuinely trying to balance the scales of his own life. "When does it open?" she asked. 6 months if construction stays on schedule. "I'm hoping you might be interested in helping develop the curriculum. Your background, your experience in both fine dining and everyday kitchens, that practical knowledge is exactly what we need." Emily felt tears prick her eyes unexpectedly. "You want me to help build a culinary training program? I want you to help create opportunities for people like you," Marino said simply. "People who have the talent and drive but not the financial resources. Will you think about it?" "Yes," Emily said immediately. "Yes, I'll think about it. Thank you." As they walked back to the restaurant, Emily felt something shift in her understanding of Jonathan Marino. He was still all the things she knew him to be: dangerous, connected to violence, operating outside the law. But he was also this: someone trying to create something positive, someone who saw the value in helping people who reminded him of himself or his family's origins. It didn't excuse the criminal activities, but it complicated the picture in ways that made him harder to categorize as simply good or bad. 3 weeks after Emily started at Marino's Crown, Marino asked her to accompany him to a charity fundraiser. "It's for children's literacy programs," he explained over coffee at the restaurant. "I'm one of the sponsors. These events are partially business networking, maintaining relationships, but the cause is genuine. I thought you might enjoy it. And frankly, I could use someone there who I can actually have real conversations with." Emily hesitated. Attending a charity gala with Jonathan Marino felt like crossing another line, moving from employee to something else entirely. But the cause was good, and she found herself curious about this aspect of his life. "I don't have anything to wear to that kind of event," she admitted. "That's handled," Marino said, and the next day a dress arrived at her apartment, elegant but not ostentatious, charcoal silk with a flattering cut, accompanied by shoes and a simple necklace. The card read simply, "Looking forward to the evening. J.M." The gala was held at one of Chicago's historic hotels. The grand ballroom transformed into an elegant space with round tables, floral centerpieces, and a stage for speeches and presentations. Emily felt out of her depth immediately. Everyone was dressed expensively, spoke with casual confidence, and seemed to know each other through various business and social connections. Marino appeared at her side as she entered, offering his arm with old-fashioned courtesy. He wore a tuxedo that fit him perfectly, and Emily noticed several women glancing his direction with obvious interest. "You look beautiful," he said quietly, and the sincerity in his voice made Emily flush slightly. "Thank you. So do you. Look good, I mean. Not beautiful. Well, maybe beautiful. This isn't going well." Marino's rare smile appeared, genuine amusement lighting his usually serious eyes. "I understood the compliment. Thank you." They made their way through the crowd, Marino introducing Emily to various people: business owners, politicians, other philanthropists. He introduced her as Emily Carter, the assistant manager of Marino's Crown and a talented chef in her own right, which was generous given her actual credentials. Emily found herself relaxing as the evening progressed. Marino was attentive without being possessive, included her in conversations, and seemed genuinely interested in her opinions when people discussed restaurant trends or culinary education. During dinner, they were seated at a table with several other donors. Emily found herself in conversation with a woman named Patricia, who ran a nonprofit providing job training for formerly incarcerated individuals. "The biggest barrier is employers willing to give people a chance," Patricia was explaining. "Everyone deserves a second chance, but convincing businesses to take that risk is challenging." "Have you considered partnering with restaurants?" Emily suggested. "The industry is always understaffed, and many roles don't require formal credentials. If you could provide basic training and vouch for candidates' reliability, I think you'd find interested employers." Patricia's eyes lit up. "That's exactly the kind of partnership I've been trying to develop." "Do you know restaurants that might be interested?" Emily glanced at Marino, who nodded slightly. "Marino's Crown might be open to discussing it, and we're opening a culinary training center next year. There might be opportunities for collaboration there." The conversation continued, plans and possibilities emerging organically. Emily felt energized in a way she hadn't in years, talking about meaningful work that could actually help people. After dinner, speeches began from the stage. representatives from the literacy programs describing their work, success stories from children who'd learned to read through the program, funding goals and achievements. It was genuinely moving, and Emily found herself glad she'd come. During a break between speeches, Marino leaned close to murmur, "I need to speak with someone briefly. Business that can't wait. Will you be all right for a few minutes?" "Of course," Emily replied. Marino stood, buttoning his jacket, and moved toward the exit with Marcus shadowing him. Emily sipped her wine, watching the crowd, feeling surprisingly comfortable despite the unfamiliar environment. Then she saw him, a man in a server's uniform, moving through the ballroom with purpose rather than the casual efficiency of normal service staff. His eyes were locked on the exit Marino had just taken, and his hand was reaching inside his jacket in a way that made Emily's blood run cold. She didn't think. She moved. Emily stood quickly, intercepting the man's path, deliberately bumping into him hard enough to make him stumble. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? I'm so clumsy." The man's eyes met hers, and she saw recognition flicker, not of her specifically, but of the interference. His hand withdrew from his jacket empty, and he forced a professional smile. "No problem, miss. My fault entirely." He moved away quickly, but not toward the exit anymore. Emily's heart hammered. She'd just stopped something, she was sure of it, though she had no concrete proof. Where was security? Where was Marcus? She scanned the ballroom urgently and spotted one of Marcus's team members near the bar. Emily made her way over, trying to look casual despite her racing pulse. The server who just left heading toward the kitchen, dark hair, scar on his left hand. He was going for a weapon when he saw Mr. Marino leave. The security man's expression sharpened. "You're certain?" "Certain enough to risk being wrong." He spoke quietly into a concealed radio, then nodded to Emily. "Stay here. Don't move." The next 10 minutes were tense. Emily saw security personnel moving discreetly, saw the suspicious server being quietly escorted out a side door. Then Marino reappeared, Marcus close beside him, his expression grim. Marino's eyes found Emily immediately, and he crossed the ballroom to her side. "Marcus tells me you spotted a potential threat. I saw someone reaching for something inside his jacket while watching you leave. It could have been nothing, but it wasn't nothing," Marino said quietly. "He had a weapon. You just prevented the second attempt on my life in less than a month, Emily." "How did you know?" "I didn't know," Emily admitted. "But something felt wrong. The way he moved. The way he was focused on you instead of his job. Kitchen instincts again, I guess. Knowing when something's out of place." Marino studied her with an intensity that made Emily's breath catch. "I owe you my life twice now. That's becoming a concerning pattern." "Then maybe you should be more careful about where you go," Emily replied, trying to lighten the moment. But Marino didn't smile. Instead, he touched her elbow gently. "Let's get you somewhere safe. This evening is over." They didn't go back to the restaurant or Emily's apartment. Instead, Marcus drove them to a house Emily had never seen. Marino's private residence, apparently. A brownstone in a quiet neighborhood with discreet security cameras and reinforced doors. Inside was surprisingly comfortable. Lived in, rather than showroom perfect, with books on shelves, comfortable furniture. Artwork that seemed chosen for personal preference, rather than investment value. Marino poured 2 glasses of whiskey without asking, handing one to Emily. His usual control was fraying at the edges, stress showing in the tension of his shoulders and the tightness around his eyes. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the sofa. "Please." Emily sat, accepting the whiskey. Marino remained standing, moving to the window to look out at the street below. 2 attempts in less than a month, he said finally. "Both would have succeeded if not for you. That's not coincidence, Emily. That's someone who knows my patterns, my security, my vulnerabilities. Someone close." "Vincent," Emily said quietly. Marino turned to look at her. "You've heard the name." "I've heard conversations. I pay attention. Detective Chen mentioned him. Tommy's investigating him. Everyone suspects him, but nobody's saying it directly. Because suspecting family and proving family betrayal are different things," Marino replied, his voice tired. "Vincent is my cousin. We grew up together. Our fathers were brothers. Ran this organization as partners before they died. I inherited leadership, but Vincent always thought it should have been split equally. He's not entirely wrong. He's capable, intelligent, ambitious. But he's also reckless, cruel in ways I'm not comfortable with. Willing to harm innocents if it serves his purposes." He drank his whiskey, then continued. "I've been trying to transition our operations, move more money into legitimate businesses, phase out the activities that cause real harm, Vincent sees that as weakness, as betraying our family's legacy. He wants to expand the illegal operations, take more territory, increase profits regardless of consequences. We've been in conflict for years, but I never thought he'd actually try to remove me. What will you do? Emily asked. Find proof. Present it to the organization's leadership. Let them decide his fate according to our traditions. Marino's expression was grim. It won't be pleasant, but it will be just. And it will send a message that challenging me has consequences. He moved to sit beside Emily on the sofa, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. I'm tired, Emily. Tired of the violence, the constant vigilance, the knowledge that people want me gone. I inherited this life. I didn't choose it. And now I'm trying to build something better. But I can't do that while fighting wars with my own family. Emily found herself responding to his vulnerability in ways she couldn't have predicted. She set down her whiskey glass and, following an impulse she didn't fully understand, reached for his hand. His fingers closed around hers. Warm, strong, trembling slightly. You're building the culinary center, she said gently. You're treating your employees well, supporting legitimate businesses, trying to create opportunities for people. That counts for something. That's meaningful change, even if it's gradual. Is it enough? Marino asked, looking at her directly. Can someone like me actually create more good than harm? Or am I just fooling myself, putting ethical paint over criminal foundations? I don't know, Emily admitted honestly. But I think trying to build something better is always worth it, regardless of where you're starting from. And I think the people whose lives you're improving, your employees, the students who'll attend the training center, people like Patricia's clients, they won't care about your past as much as your present actions. Marino's thumb brushed across her knuckles, a gesture so gentle it made Emily's heart ache unexpectedly. You make me want to be better than I am. The air between them shifted, charged with something Emily couldn't quite name. She was acutely aware of his proximity, the warmth of his hand in hers, the vulnerability in his eyes that she suspected few people ever saw. Jonathan, she said softly, using his first name for the first time. The moment stretched, full of possibility and danger in equal measure. Then Marino's phone buzzed, shattering the intimacy. He pulled it out, read the message, and his expression hardened. Tommy found something. Evidence on Vincent's communications. He's been planning this for months. Marino stood, his professional mask sliding back into place. I need to deal with this. Marcus will take you home. I'm sorry. Tonight was supposed to be a pleasant evening, not another crisis. It's okay, Emily said, standing as well. Do what you need to do, just be careful. I will. And Emily, thank you. For tonight, for the conversation, for, he paused, seeming to search for words, for seeing me as more than just what I do. Emily wanted to say more, wanted to acknowledge the connection that seemed to be forming between them despite all the reasons it was complicated and probably unwise. But Marcus appeared in the doorway, and the moment passed. The next evening, Emily was closing Marino's crown. It was nearly midnight and most of the staff had already left. She was doing final checks, ensuring the kitchen was properly secured, the safe was locked, the security system armed. Robert had left an hour earlier, trusting Emily to handle the closing procedures. She'd proven herself capable over the past weeks, and the responsibility felt good, like she was finally building the career she'd always wanted. She was in the office, reviewing tomorrow's reservations on the computer, when she heard the back door open. That was odd. Everyone should have left already, and the door should have been locked. Emily stood, moving toward the hallway. Hello? Robert, did you forget something? No response, but she could hear footsteps. Multiple people, moving with purpose rather than casual entry. Her instincts screamed danger. Emily reached for her phone, but before she could dial, 3 men rounded the corner. She recognized one from the charity gala, not the server she'd stopped, but another face she'd seen in the crowd. The others were strangers, but their intent was clear in their expressions. Emily Carter, the man from the gala said. You've become a real problem. Vincent wants to talk to you. Emily backed up, her mind racing. I don't know anyone named Vincent. Sure you don't. You just keep preventing his plans, interfering, getting in the way. Time to remove the obstacle. Emily's hand found the panic button Marcus had installed in the office. A discreet button under the desk edge that would alert security immediately. She pressed it while keeping her expression neutral. If you leave now, we can all forget this happened. Emily tried, though she knew it was pointless. The men moved fast. Emily tried to run, but they were blocking the only exit. She grabbed a stapler from the desk, ridiculous weapon but better than nothing, and threw it at the closest man. It hit his shoulder harmlessly, but it bought her seconds. She screamed, hoping someone nearby might hear. But the restaurant was in a commercial district. Everything else closed at this hour. Where was security? How long did it take them to respond? Strong hands grabbed her arms. Emily fought, remembering self-defense basics. Go for eyes, throat, knees. She managed to stomp on one man's foot, elbow another in the ribs, but there were 3 of them and 1 of her. They zip-tied her wrists, and one of them produced a cloth that smelled chemical and wrong. Emily turned her head, trying to avoid it, but they were too strong. "Don't make this harder," one of them said. "You're coming with us either way." The last thing Emily saw before darkness claimed her was the office door, where Marcus would eventually arrive, too late to prevent what was happening. Her last conscious thought was wondering if Jonathan Marino would trade himself for her life, and hoping desperately that he wouldn't. Emily woke tied to a chair in an abandoned warehouse. Vincent Marino stood before her, similar features to Jonathan but with colder eyes. "You've been quite the problem," Vincent said. "Twice you've saved my cousin. That ends tonight. I've sent Jonathan your location. He'll come alone, and I'll finally take what should have been mine." Hours passed. Then gunshots echoed outside. Jonathan's team stormed in. Marcus leading, Sophia coordinating, Tommy jamming communications. The fight was brutal but swift. Emily freed herself partially, kicked a weapon toward Marcus at a crucial moment. Vincent was subdued. His men surrendered. "It's over," Jonathan said, cutting her restraints. "You're safe." Vincent was handed to the organization's council, exiled, not eliminated. Jonathan's mercy surprised everyone. Emily managed Marino's crown confidently. The culinary training center opened, with Emily developing curriculum. She and Jonathan met for their regular Tuesday dinners, friendship deepening into something more, carefully and honestly. "You saved my life 3 times, Jonathan said over wine. "No," Emily replied. "We saved each other." Snow fell outside as they talked about futures finally possible, his transition to legitimacy, her culinary dreams, and the connection they'd built through crisis. Not a perfect ending, but a beginning.